Welcome, dear listener, to another deep dive. Our mission, as always, is to take a stack of sources, articles, research, maybe just detailed notes, and really pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight. We sift through it all so you can get up to speed quickly, hopefully learn a few surprising things, and maybe have a little fun along the way.
Hopefully.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a truly unique document. It's very specific. This source outlines what it claims is the optimal compatibility of the Pokemon, Vaporeon, and it gets really explicit. We're talking male, human, and female Pokemon breeding.
Yes, it's quite granular in its focus.
It really is. It breaks down its arguments point by point, from biology to game mechanics. Our goal today is to meticulously unpack every single claim, every observation presented. We want to look at how it builds this unusual case.
Indeed. And our source makes some exceptionally detailed and, let's be honest, rather bold claims. He builds quite an elaborate case. So as your guides, we'll help you understand the specific criteria, the reasoning this document uses to construct its central argument.
Crucially, our aim is just to convey the ideas within the source material impartially.
Exactly. We're focusing on what the source states and how it supports its claims, not whether we agree or endorse them. We're analyzing the argument itself, however, unconventional the topic.
Okay, buckle up then. Because our source doesn't exactly ease you in, it jumps straight into what it sees as the foundational reason for Vaporeon's compatibility. Starts with biology, or its interpretation of it. Let's unpack this.
The foundational arguments for compatibility, biological and physical attributes.
So the very first point the source brings up, the foundation for Vaporeon suitability, is its classification. It's in the field egg group. And the source explicitly states this group is mostly comprised of mammals. So according to this specific material, what does that classification tell us? Why start there? What's the significance?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? How right from the start, the document tries to establish this almost pseudo-biological link. It sets a premise.
A premise for the later, more explicit stuff.
Precisely. By putting Vaporeon in an egg group, it says is mostly comprised of mammals. The text immediately implies there's some kind of shared fundamental biological framework between Vaporeon and, well, humans.
So it's taking a game mechanic, the egg group, which just dictates breeding within the game.
Right, who can breed with whom in Pokemon. And it's applying this very specific real-world biological interpretation to it. It's a deliberate recontextualization by the author.
Okay, so this classification is presented as the initial justification, the reason Vaporeon might be suitable for human breeding.
That's how the source presents it, yes. It's essentially trying to ground this highly unconventional idea in something that sounds kind of scientific, or at least biologically plausible.
By suggesting Vaporeon shares traits with mammalian reproduction.
Exactly. It's the first pillar for the whole argument. It's about pre-framing the discussion, asserting this biological precedent that, for the author, gives some initial legitimacy before they get into the really specific interactions.
It's a strategic move, then, trying to make the later claims seem less outlandish.
I think that's a fair reading of the source's strategy. Start with something that sounds vaguely logical, even if the logic itself is based on reinterpreting game rules.
That biological link definitely sets a strange tone, an attempt to root fantasy in science-ish language. But what struck me next was the jump to almost clinical precision.
The measurements.
Exactly. 3 feet, 3 inches tall, 63.9 pounds. It feels very deliberate, trying to ground it in something empirical. What does this pivot to specific dimensions tell us about its strategy for arguing physical compatibility? Is it just trying to sound rigorous?
I think it's a prime example of the source's whole approach, actually. It uses this rhetoric of specificity, these precise numbers, to give its claims an air of, well, undeniable fact.
And it connects these numbers directly to function.
Directly, yes. The document links these dimensions, 3'3", 63.9 pounds, to a very specific, very explicit aspect of functionality. The author states quite clearly that Vaporeon's size makes them large enough to be able to handle human dicks.
Okay, so it's not just a random detail. It's presented as key evidence.
Absolutely key. It provides a tangible, almost anatomical basis for the source's claim about physical interaction. The specificity isn't arbitrary at all. It's chosen.
So by giving exact numbers for a fictional creature, the author is trying to
lend it a false sense of scientific rigor, perhaps, or at least a meticulousness that suggests careful research. It moves the argument from that general biological idea to very concrete physical suitability.
It shows the level of detail the source goes into.
An almost obsessive level, you could say, trying to validate its thesis. It's not enough to just say compatible. It wants to provide what it sees as quantifiable proof through these physical attributes, grounding the argument in a measurable, if interpreted, reality for that very specific purpose.
It tells you the author is really committed to building a case that looks thorough, no matter how strange the topic.
Exactly. Exhaustive and well supported from their perspective.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, for me anyway. The source dives right into specific in-game mechanics, Pokemon game mechanics.
Right, the stats and moves.
Yeah, it points to Vaporeon's impressive base stats for HP and access to acid armor. And then it makes this direct leap, stating that because of these, you can be rough with one. That's quite a jump, isn't it? From abstract game numbers to such a concrete physical and explicit implication, how does the source justify connecting these game stats to physical durability in this context?
Well, this part really illustrates the source's core method, I think.
Right.
It systematically takes abstract game mechanics and translates them into concrete physiological and physical effects within its imagined reality.
Okay, so break that down. HP stats.
Right. Base stats for HP in the game basically signify a Pokemon's health, its robustness, its ability to take hits in battle. High HP means it's naturally tough within the game world.
And acid armor.
That's a specific move Vaporeon can learn. In the game, it drastically boosts its defense stat, making it much harder to damage.
Okay, so high health, high defense potential in the game.
And here's the crucial interpretive leap the source makes. The author reads these attributes, high HP, access to acid armor, as direct, literal indicators of Vaporeon's physical durability outside the game's battle system.
So tough in the game equals tough enough for demanding physical interaction?
That's exactly the argument the source makes. It posits that because Vaporeon is inherently robust and can boost its defenses in the game, it logically follows, within the source's framework, that it can withstand rough physical interaction in the explicit context of human breeding.
It's not just a casual connection, then.
No, it's a deliberate extrapolation. It leverages known data points from this fictional universe to support a very specific, very unconventional hypothesis. The source is basically saying Vaporeon's in-game toughness translates directly to real-world hardiness for this specific purpose.
Which strengthens the overall argument for physical compatibility and endurance.
Precisely. It allows the author to explicitly claim that one can be rough with a Vaporeon, directly linking that fictional resilience to a practical application in their imagined scenario.
Wow.
It's quite a remarkable example of how the source uses any available data, regardless of origin, to build its detailed case.
Physiological and behavioral facilitators for prolonged engagement.
Okay, so we've got the basic anatomy covered,
Yeah.
and this idea of toughness derived from game stats. But then the source takes a real deep dive, pun intended, into Vaporeon's core nature.
The water aspect.
It's mostly water-based biology. And then it states, with just absolute certainty, there's no doubt in my mind that an aroused Vaporeon would be incredibly wet.
Yes, it's quite emphatic.
So wet that you could easily have sex with one for hours without getting sore. I mean, that claim about inherent wetness and connecting it directly to prolonged activity, that feels pretty central to the whole argument.
Oh, it's undeniably central. It marks a real pivot from general physical traits to a very specific perceived physiological advantage that directly facilitates the interaction the source is describing.
How does it build that argument? And what about that certainty, no doubt in my mind?
Well, the author takes Vaporeon's core type, its water-based nature, and presents it not just as descriptive, but as the direct, undeniable cause for this incredibly wet state when aroused.
So, water type inherently lubricated when aroused.
According to the source, absolutely. The confidence is striking. That phrase, no doubt in my mind, just dismisses any possibility of ambiguity. It's presented as physiological fact within the author's constructed reality.
And this wetness is then linked to endurance.
Immediately and explicitly. The implication is that this natural, maybe even self-replenishing lubrication would allow for extended interaction for hours without getting sore.
Which addresses a practical consideration for that kind of activity.
Exactly. It removes a common physical barrier. It shows how comprehensive the source tries to be, integrating every conceivable angle from basic biology to the mechanics of long-term physical interaction.
It's the author's confident interpretation of the water-based aspect, translating it into a crucial functional benefit.
A crucial and functional benefit for the specific activity they're focused on, yeah. Leaving absolutely no room for doubt within their own argument's framework.
Okay, so beyond the physical and the inherent wetness, The source brings in Vaporeon's learnable moves.
Yeah.
And even specific anatomical details.
Right, the behavioral and visual components.
It lists moves like Attract, Baby Doll Eyes, Captivate, Charm, and Tail Whip. And it also mentions not having fur to hide nipples. And the claim is that these things make it incredibly easy for one to get you in the mood. This feels like another example of that core principle, taking game stuff and applying it physiologically, psychologically.
I think this section really shows how exhaustive the source tries to be. It's bringing in behavior and visuals.
So those moves,
Yeah.
Track, Charm, etc. in the game,
Yeah.
they affect opponents, right? Like infatuation or lowering stats.
Exactly. They manipulate an opponent's state in battle. And the author here interprets those in-game effects as directly transferable methods for, well, getting a human in the mood.
Suggesting Vaporeon has abilities to actively persuade or arouse a human partner.
That's the implication. That it has the suite of abilities, learned behaviors from the game that can facilitate desire. It's a very imaginative leap from combat mechanics to a human emotional or sexual response.
And the anatomical point, not having fur to hide nipples.
That's presented as a direct visual stimulus. The lack of concealment is framed by the source as inherently contributing to arousal.
So that moves beyond just game mechanics into imagined anatomy.
Precisely. It shows the author is willing to integrate any detail, however graphic or minor, if it supports the thesis. This part weaves together the learned behaviors, the moves, and the inherent appearance.
To argue for its capacity to elicit desire.
Right. It adds another layer to the compatibility claim, not just physical, not just physiological, but also, as the source implies, emotional or psychological inducement. It really shows the depth of detail the author goes into.
And then for the really long haul, sustained engagement, the source points to abilities like water absorb and hydration.
Ah, yes, the recovery abilities.
It claims that because of these, they can easily recover from fatigue with enough water. How do these specific abilities fit into the bigger picture of compatibility for prolonged activity? It feels like it's circling back to endurance.
It definitely is. The document strategically uses Vaporeon's standard abilities to really hammer home the endurance argument, completing that picture of long-term viability.
Okay, so water absorb in the game. Vaporeon heals from water attacks, right?
Correct. It turns potential damage into healing, improves resilience in battle.
And hydration?
That lets it recover from status problems like paralysis or sleep when it's raining or wet. Again, a battle-focused recovery mechanic.
So how does the source reinterpret these for this context?
The author interprets these very literal game mechanics, which are about water interaction in combat, as direct, literal mechanisms for physical recovery from fatigue in the context of breeding.
So water absorbed and hydration mean it can just keep going if there's water around.
That's the explicit claim. They can easily recover from fatigue with enough water. It's a significant recontextualization. The author translates combat recovery into physiological recovery for sustained sexual activity.
Which means Vaporeon isn't just tough, but can also bounce back quickly.
Exactly. According to the source, it can maintain extended periods of engagement, almost indefinitely, given enough water. This directly supports that earlier claim about being able to have sex for hours without getting sore.
It adds longevity.
Yeah.
And maybe reusability.
Longevity and reusability, yes, that's the dimension it adds. It's another perfect example of the source's method. Take game mechanics, extrapolate them into practical, real-world, explicit outcomes to consistently boost the central thesis of compatibility and endurance, creating this narrative of continuous, resilient performance.
The unrivaled claim and a fun fact.
Okay, so after laying out all these points, the biology, the size, the wetness, the moves, the recovery, the source wraps it all up with this incredibly definitive statement.
The grand conclusion.
No other Pokemon comes close to this level of compatibility. That's a very strong, very bold claim, almost like a final judgment. What does that tell us about the source's conviction and its ambition?
Well, connecting it all, that statement isn't just a summary. It's the ultimate declaration of the source's entire argument. It positions Vaporeon not just as a compatible choice, but as the singular, optimal, completely unrivaled choice.
For this specific human-Pokemon breeding scenario.
For that very specific scenario, yes. The author is asserting, with total conviction, that the unique combination of all those attributes we discussed, the biological plausibility from the egg group, The physical suitability from the dimensions, the lubrication from its water nature, the mood setting from the moves, the endurance from the recovery abilities,
That all adds up to something unique.
to a level of synergy and suitability that, according to the source, simply cannot be matched by any other Pokemon, period.
It's the ultimate so what for the whole argument from the source's view.
Exactly. It implies they've done a comparative analysis, even if they don't show the work for other Pokemon in this text. The author presents it like it's self-evident truth, the only logical conclusion from the details provided.
It suggests the author feels they've presented a completely airtight case.
An exhaustive, conclusive, utterly persuasive case, yes. Leaving no room for debate that another Pokemon could possibly rival Vaporeon's specific advantages as detailed in the document. It's the definitive word from their perspective. Shows real conviction in this very unusual thesis.
And then right at the very end, almost like a PS, there's this fun fact.
Ah, yes, the fun fact.
It just states, also, fun fact, if you pull out enough, you can make your Vaporeon turn white, which is, while it's unique and very graphic, it feels like a sudden shift from the pseudoscientific tone before it.
It does feel like a tonal shift, yes.
What can we make of that final claim? It seems kind of separate from the main compatibility points, but the author still included it. Is it just trying to be memorable, or does it serve some other purpose in their view?
That last point, the fun fact, it is indeed highly explicit and graphic. It acts as this concluding, almost postscript observation.
Not directly tied to why Vaporeon is compatible?
Not really, no. The previous points were about suitability, physical, physiological, behavioral. This is different. It introduces a very specific, rather unusual outcome or consequence related to the explicit interactions being discussed.
It reads like a strange anecdote, maybe, or just something the author felt compelled to add.
Possibly. It adds this final, striking, very particular detail to the whole discussion. It kind of underscores the depth of the author's thinking on the subject, maybe, showing a willingness to go beyond just theoretical compatibility to these very specific, maybe observed, maybe just imagined consequences.
It doesn't really strengthen the compatibility argument itself, though.
Not in the same way, no. It doesn't explain why Vaporeon is suitable. It just provides this additional, rather crude and startling piece of knowledge from the source's perspective. It emphasizes how thoroughly the author explored this niche topic right down to potential side effects, I suppose.
It's definitely memorable. A peculiar closing remark.
Very peculiar. Leaves you with a very distinct, maybe unsettling image. A final testament to the author's complete immersion in their specific, explicit subject matter. Outro.
So we've taken quite the deep dive today into a really specific, really explicit document. We've meticulously laid out its claims about Vaporeon's supposedly unique compatibility for human breeding. And we've seen how this source builds its case using this incredible range of factors, right?
Yeah.
From biological classifications, like the field A group being mostly mammals,
Right, setting that baseline.
to precise physical attributes like height and weight being large enough to handle human dicks. We saw the interpretations of game mechanics, HP, and acid armor, meaning you can be rough with one.
And the physiological claims, too.
Yeah, the mostly water-based biology leading to being incredibly wet for hours without getting sore, plus the moves like attract and charm, and even not having fur to hide nipples to supposedly get you in the mood.
It's quite the construction.
It really is a prime example of how a source can build an elaborate argument, pulling together seemingly disparate points to support a very, very specific and, let's say, niche thesis.
And this deep dive definitely raises a key question for you, the listener, doesn't it? How do sources, even really unconventional ones like this, use specific details, whether they're biological terms, numbers, or ideas pulled from fiction to build what feels like a comprehensive and persuasive case?
Yeah, and what are the underlying assumptions? The interpretations embedded in choosing those details and connecting them in that way, it really highlights the author's method.
That selective use and interpretation of information to weave together a coherent, albeit, yes, unusual narrative.
Absolutely. Think about how confidently the author extrapolates from fictional things, game stats, abilities, to these very real-world, very explicit implications about physical interaction, endurance. What does that tell us about how people can interpret source material, sometimes imaginatively, sometimes intensely, no matter how specific or unconventional the topic? We really encourage you to ponder how all these detailed claims get woven together to reach that definitive conclusion about Vaporeon's supposed unparalleled compatibility.
Food for thought, definitely.
That's all for this deep dive. We hope you gain some surprising insights into how arguments get constructed, even around the most unexpected topics imaginable.